Welcome back to You Bet Your American Life, a satire of American media and political punditry. I'm your host, Groucho Marxist. Tonight, we're talking about the latest and greatest of President Trump's spectacular celebration of his 250th birthday, complete with a yellow birthday cake. No, wait, sorry folks. There was a typo in my ChatGPT prompt. Tonight, we're talking about President Trump's spectacular adoration of himself, disguised almost as convincingly as I am, as a celebration of the 250th birthday of the U.S. and her Army, complete with fireworks and yellow cake uranium. Break out the party hats and howitzers, folks. In our first segment tonight, Birthday Tanks, we're talking about how the U.S. Army threw itself a birthday bash in June. And it didn't skimp on the spectacle. On June 14th, America's most well-funded institution turned 250, and what better way to celebrate than with a glorified military flex down the streets of Washington? Coincidentally, as in not coincidentally, this just happened to fall on Donald Trump's 79th birthday because of course it did. The fever dream of tanks and troops tromping through the Capitol has apparently been living rent-free in President Trump's head since his first term. Because nothing says Make America Great Again like turning Pennsylvania Avenue into Pyongyang Light. The Army, ever the grateful pawn, so the price tag for this chest-thumping charade could have hit a cool $45 million. And that's just their cut. Public costs were likely even higher. Who needs healthcare when we can have synchronized missile launcher choreography? For perspective, a rare commodity these days, when was the last time America played this particular game of dress up with tanks? That would be 1991, after the first Gulf War. You know, an actual military victory. Even back then, people were side-eyeing it. There was a real debate in President Bush Sr.'s administration about whether it was all a bit off-brand for the U.S. They ultimately went ahead with it as a way to say, hey, remember Vietnam? Look, we won this time. Subtle. So, historically, these parades have happened when we, won wars, Civil War, World Wars, that kind of thing. Real ticker-tape moments. Back in the founding days, Americans were deeply allergic to standing armies, thanks Britain, so when the country actually rolled out the troops in public, it was to celebrate disbanding them. Ironic. Throw a big parade, then everyone goes home. 1865, 1919, 1945, all moments when we were like, cool, we're done with mass violence for now, not, say, a peacetime pissing contest to stroke a septuagenarian's flaccid ego. But didn't Eisenhower and JFK have some parades with military hardware? Are we being a little precious about all this? They did, but context matters. Those were inaugurations, a moment when the military is supposed to play a ceremonial role. They weren't parades for one, with Grandpa shouting from the podium about how big his flaccid crowd is. What we're seeing now reeks more of strongman cosplay. Think North Korea, Cold War Russia, regimes where leaders compensate for insecurities with ballistic pageantry. This isn't about national pride, it's about authoritarian thirst traps. So, bottom line, this parade wasn't just garish, it was ideologically gross. It's not patriotism, it's performative nationalism in combat boots. The kind of thing you do when you can't win a war, can't reduce the deficit, and won't stop bitching on social media. But by God, you can still throw a party for the toys. This isn't the end of the parade. Charade. President Trump has announced that an Ultimate Fighting Championship bout will be held on the grounds of the White House next year. Because, nothing says celebration of American history and culture like a bunch of grown men punching each other in the face. UFC was one of a list of tasteless sponsors for Trump's birthday bash, including the likes of Coinbase, Walmart, and Amazon. Heck, why not the delicious taste of Charleston Chew? Let's be real, folks. This is just another example of how the President of the United States, brought to you by Carl's Jr., loves all things tacky. I mean, who needs a dignified and respectful semi-quincentennial celebration of America's founding when you can have a UFC fight in the middle of the White House lawn? And don't even get me started on the fact that President Trump is a huge fan of the UFC. I mean, it's not like he's just a fan of violence or anything. It couldn't be. No, please God, no. In other news, President Trump has decided to join Israel in attacking nuclear facilities in Iran. Because what's a birthday party without a little bombing, am I right? In our segment, Intercontinental Party Foul, we'll discuss how Trump's birthday wish came true with brinkmanship, bombs, and the kind of decision-making that would make Dr. Evil look like a strategic genius. So here's the deal. The U.S. joined Israel's war on Iran, bombing 3 of Iran's nuclear sites, with the birthday boy in charge, President Donald J. Trump, declaring it a spectacular military success. Spectacular? More like a juggling act with chainsaws, except the chainsaws are B-2 bombers and nuclear weapons. President Trump only subverted expectations by foregoing the sharks with laser beams attached to their foreheads.
Sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their heads.
So here we go again, another Middle East crisis, and of course, the US is right in the middle, acting like they've got a map to the promised land. They think they're the ones to save the day, but really they're just tossing gasoline onto a burning fire like it's the best way to put it out. According to a recent scientific study, dropping bombs on Iranian nuclear facilities is the big brain way to achieve world peace. Back in the 2000s, I heard this saying about flies, honey, vinegar, and weapons of mass destruction, but I never found the punchline. The US and Israel are out here patting each other on the back, but they're nothing but the troublemakers in this entire mess. Iran's been here before, and they're not going down without a fight. It's like an exciting game of chess, and Magnus Carlsen is either going to win or completely destroy the board with an aerial attack. Because if you can't beat them with brains, at least you can make sure that everyone in the room is really uncomfortable. Speaking of making everyone uncomfortable, let's talk about the international reactions to America's new diplomatic policy in our segment, Nuclear Reactions. With President Trump declaring, "do as I say, not as I do," as his official stance on international relations, some countries are all about diplomacy, while others are just itching for a fight. The Saudis are scared, Iran's allies are fuming, and the UN is scrambling to keep things from escalating. Iran's foreign minister had the audacity to tweet that the attack would have everlasting consequences, which is rich considering we're already on the third act of a play titled World War. When bombing someone's nuclear facilities is just another day at the office for the Pentagon, what exactly does escalation even mean? Meanwhile, Iran's still standing, thanks for asking. They've been through revolutions, wars, and more drama than daytime television. And honestly, they've got the survival skills of someone with nothing better to watch than Man vs. Wild. They know how to turn a potential crisis into a victory lap, even if they have to squeeze it out of a wet turd. I'm an actual degenerate, and even I wouldn't bet on Iran going down without a fight. Now let's talk about the heavy hitters. Prime Minister Netanyahu praised Trump's move, calling it a history-making moment. Yeah, history is being made all right. History of bad decisions and international chaos. He's been waiting for this moment to finally finish off a country that's been giving him trouble for decades. And the cherry on top, Netanyahu's been drooling over regime change since Bibi became the boy wonder. And let's not forget about the US's role in all this. I mean, we're not going to get involved in a nuclear arms race between Israel and Iran, right? Well, it's a bit late for that. This is exactly what we wanted to avoid. The US was supposed to be the grown-ups in the situation, not the ones lighting the fuse on a global time bomb. But here we are, because apparently making deals with dictators is so yesterday. Let's just bomb the place and call it a victory. The real kicker, the US is now in a situation where they've essentially declared war on Iran. Is this really what we wanted, though? I thought President Trump was supposed to put an end to endless wars, not stoke them. Pro tip, next time, maybe just send in a couple of drones with a note saying, "We're sorry, we can't let you have your nukes. Also, we've been trying to reach you regarding your car's extended warranty." The real question is, what's Trump's endgame? Is it simply to make Iran's nuclear program more efficient? By destroying it? Or is it to change the regime in Iran? Or, at the very least, destabilize it in a way that increases the likelihood of an uprising? Because, you know, that's exactly what we need. More chaos, more military adventurism, more needless death and destruction. That's really what's at the heart of the American Constitution. And let's not forget the constitutional question in our segment, Political Fallout. Bombing Iran without Congress's authorization is a clear violation of the rules set in place to prevent exactly this kind of madness. But hey, rules were made to be broken, right? Especially when they get in the way of a good old military adventure. But the political fallout is even more entertaining. Republicans are rallying behind Trump, acting like he's the next George Washington. The original George Washington? No, JFK Jr. back from the grave. And on the other hand, there's the Democrats. They're stuck in a funhouse of mirrors trying not to be seen as defending Iran or, for some reason, the Constitution. Oh, the president did what? Without Congress? Again? He certainly won't get away with this. Again? The debate over congressional authorization has some lawmakers pushing for clearer language that would require authorization for such military actions. But it's a classic case of political posturing. I hope you're a fan of Dickinson and Frost because it's painfully poetic that the American Constitution has become a game of Mao, with both sides just making up the rules as they go. In the end, this whole situation is a farce. The US is acting like it's the world's peacekeeper while tossing gasoline onto a powder keg, and the international community is left scratching their heads, wondering how we've come to this yet again. Meanwhile, we're all just sitting here watching the administration gamble with our lives and our livelihoods. The real joke, though, is that we're still calling this diplomacy. It's like the Middle East is the world's punchline, and everyone's just dying to laugh. Folks, we'll be right back with You Bet Your American Life after this commercial break. Welcome back to You Bet Your American Life. I'm your host, Groucho Marxist, and in our last segment, we're talking about the latest poll numbers and what they say about the state of American democracy. And let me tell you, it's not pretty. The numbers are in, and they're not good. President Trump's approval rating is stuck at 43%. That's right, folks, 43% of Americans think he's doing a good job. Unfortunately for the blue, and by that I mean the color of your pixie-style mullet, that's still twice as much approval as the Democratic Party has nationally. But 57% of Americans still think he's a disaster waiting to happen. That's right, they're still waiting for Trump to make a disaster of our economy and international relations and destroy all confidence in our social programs, elections, and in the very concept of American democracy. Fingers crossed he didn't already obliterate those foundational American institutions. Speaking of doubt in the state of democracy, 3/4 of Americans think American democracy is under threat. Under threat from what? A president who thinks he's above the law? A president who doesn't need congressional approval to commit open acts of war? Who needs rule of law when you've got the peace-promoting, war-ending president of law and order at the helm? And then there's the issue of deportations. Trump's been saying for months that he's going to deport people regardless of whether they're here illegally, legally but Democrat, illegally but Republican, U.S.-born citizens, the mayor of New York. Well, recent polling shows that 54% of Americans think ICE has gone too far in enforcing immigration laws. That's right, folks. 54% of Americans think Trump's immigration policies are a disaster. But it's a complicated issue. Yeah, that's one way to put it. Let's be honest, folks. This all boils down to the crowning jewel of the Trump administration playbook: fear. The MAGA movement was founded on fear, and the authoritarian scare tactics of this administration continue to use fear-mongering to secure the art of the deal. Americans are afraid of war. They're afraid that their friends, their family, their spouses, their celebrities, and their duly elected officials will be kidnapped at gunpoint in broad daylight by masked men with no credentials to their authority. Oh yeah, and if it's not American guns being pointed at civilians, there's also the threat of looming nuclear war. Let's just hope that President Trump's ego will be the last casualty of this whole operation. That's all for tonight's show, folks. Thank you for watching You Bet Your American Life, where it gets more absurd with each passing moment. We'll be back sometime with more, quote, news, more commentary, and more satire. And remember, the real punchline is that we're still pretending to take this all seriously. Good night.